All right, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday, July 31st, 2025, the last day of July here, and another busy day in the earthquake department, 11:46 a.m. California time here. Still got a lot of activity stirring up there off the coast of Russia from that mega-quake 8.8 there a couple days ago, but it appears as though the adjustment here with the Pacific Plate has added further strain out here against California. With today's event, a 4.3 and a swarm there off the San Andreas Fault. I do talk a lot about how at times we'll see the release of pressure, so to speak here, temporarily, right? When we see larger events out here across the area of the Pacific Plate here to the west around Japan. We've seen it happen back in 2011, the 9.1 earthquake. That seemed to have relieved a little bit of stress for California, but that does not appear to be the case here with this most recent 8.8. It looks like it's definitely added some further strain here across the west coast. Cascadia subduction zone up there as well. We'll show that here in a minute. But this morning, a 4.3, not a big earthquake. The thing is about this is that it's been quiet out here. Literally within the last couple weeks, really no felt earthquakes, super quiet up and down the state. But ever since this 8.8 there, 2 days ago now, it has definitely ramped up in terms of earthquake activity. That 4.3 striking just off the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault. It is in the red. The reason why is because it was felt by quite a few people there in Southern California, as you can see on the felt map. From Long Beach, Los Angeles, Palmdale, all the way down to San Diego, fill in that 4.3. The importance of this is that it's located very close there to the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. It looks like it may be on, let's see the exact fault here. Looks like it's just off the San Jacinto Fault Zone. But this is the interchange here, or the connection where the San Jacinto Fault Zone and many other faults branch off of the San Andreas Fault here, which is the plate boundary. And by the way, I just want to show you guys this map, not to scare you, but to make you aware. Got a lot of new viewers here, so I want to show this map. This is the time in years since we've last had earthquake activity in terms of full ruptures along the plate boundary. Obviously, California littered with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other fault systems out there, right? But this is the main boundary between the North American and the Pacific Plate. This is where the big earthquakes can occur, and slip rate is higher across this area than all these other little fault systems that are inland or offshore. So look at this area down here. This little segment of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, really close to where we're seeing today's event, has not had a rupture in over 300 years. Just this little segment. The 7.9 right now did not, 7.9 back in 1857, right, was a portion of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, but it did not take the extreme southern segment here with it. And that was over 213 years ago. Regular intervals of large earthquakes run about 150 years on this area of the San Andreas Fault. And look at these big numbers out here. That's a little concerning here. It could happen at any given time. We got to watch these little hints and clues, right? Just like that big earthquake swarm there off the coast of Russia 11 days ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. We had a 7.4 mini sixes, and I said it wasn't over. I thought something was brewing. It looked very similar to the Japan sequence where we had a bunch of foreshock activity days previous to the 9-pointer. That's not the case right here, right now, but the importance here is the amount of time that has passed. So any suspicious earthquake activity around or on the San Andreas Fault could be the next trigger, so to speak, that could unleash this built-up strain. 213 years for the southern segment. And now, potentially here, this next one that goes out here will take the entirety of the southern branch, resulting in an 8.1, which is much stronger than a 7.9, just because of the amount of time that has passed here on the southern branch. And this little section here, 300 years, it did not rupture. So we know that's, it's not fused to the plate. This is not fused. It definitely will release in a great earthquake here soon, I feel. The Parkfield segment, and this is just a little theory here that many people tend to bring up. The Parkfield section here normally sees an earthquake every 20 to 22 years of a 6.0. Now, this here is showing, this is more than just the Parkfield segment. That's why it's called the Central San Andreas Fault. That was 168 years ago. I believe that was a 7.5 up here, but this central section includes more than just the Parkfield segment. But the Parkfield section itself there is a little southern segment that gets awfully close here to the locked area of the southern branch. That area, let me show you guys on a different map. The Parkfield section up here, just north right here, really small section, but it's below the creeping section here. But it's a section that has earthquakes of 6.0 every 20 to 22 years, and the last event on the Parkfield section was 2004. So we're at 21 years now, and there's some potential concern that the next 6-pointer on here will unzip this locked area here, the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, due to the amount of time that has passed here. It's definitely on the plate boundary. It can happen, and that's why we got to watch this very closely. I know last year, if you recall here, we had more 4-pointers out across the Southern California area than at any time since the mid-'80s, making big-time news with many different areas, many different fault systems, which have not been active in recent years. They were starting to act up, such as the Puente Hills Thrust Fault that runs directly underneath Los Angeles. Bakersfield, outside of Bakersfield here, was acting up. Malibu Coast Fault last year was a crazy amount of earthquake activity, but then it died down for a little bit, and it was super quiet here in the last couple weeks here across California. If you recall, my videos talked about how, well, there's not much going on there. Northern California, a different story up there along the Cascadia. That's been active, and it's still active. But today, it does seem like we're on the uptick. This is not the only earthquake of interest here. We got several that run up here along the coastline. Quite a bit of activity along the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault. They call that the creeping section because it's an area of slow slip, so to speak, between the two plates. It really doesn't lock up, similar to, like areas up north here, the northern section and the central and southern segment. It just kind of creeps along, so to speak, but it can result in some decent earthquake activity. Let me see what we got here following that. Well, let's take a look here real quick, see if they're putting out any kind of aftershock forecast. It's interesting here. This is just your textbook cover, so to speak, here. No one knows exactly what's going to take place here. This is just your standard forecast there that USGS has done something somewhat recently, within the last 7-8 years or so. They did something similar to this on the Ridgecrest earthquakes. Remember back in 2019, July 4th, July 5th. July 4th, we had I believe it was a 6.9. And then one day later, the 7.1, a bigger quake. And they had like a 1% chance that a bigger quake would happen. So this is just not even worth looking at because no one knows exactly what's going to happen. All I know is when there's increasing pressure out here, and we're seeing it across the West Coast, all up and down the board, that's a time to be on guard. These little telltale small earthquakes, they may be small, but they point to a bigger story of increasing strain out here. We don't get earthquakes because of backing off. We get earthquakes because of further pressurization resulting in that earthquake activity, and it's up and down the board today. There was one 3.1 last night. A couple earthquakes down south here as well, one within the last hour. It's just lighting up here fairly decent. Let me see what we got for movement so far. We got to watch the magnitudes. That's the important thing here as well. If we start seeing multiple 3s and 4s, that could be a bad sign. Right now, well, it looks like this morning we did see some earthquakes above the 2.5 level. There was a 3-pointer and a 2.8. Very shallow earthquake activity. Pretty well, not crustal quakes, but it's somewhat shallow there in the area. So there's been at least one 3-pointer, 2.8, the largest so far, 4.3, but then shortly thereafter we have another 3.1. So right now, even though the 4.3 is the largest event, there's no main quake. It's not like we had a 4.3 here and then followed up by a bunch of aftershock activity. There was previous movement as well. And similar to what we've seen over there across Russia, but on a smaller scale and in totally different type of boundary here. There's a strike slip boundary out here across the plate boundary, the San Andreas fault. Similar to that, we're getting these events of various magnitudes with no main quake yet. So that's what we got to watch out for. In total tally, just specifically in this area alone, 14 earthquakes, and it all began, looks like about 8:34 this morning. It was only about an hour that it took for that 4.3 to build up out there. So just watch it, folks. There's a lot of time that has passed out here, and it's with everything else going on in the world, big mega quakes. I could see Southern California, the big one finally hitting down here. It would make sense. It seems like when chaos comes across the globe, that's when big events happen. So just be on guard, and it is lighting up out there. This is, a lot of people say, well, this is normal, and that's called complacency. You got to look where this is happening. If this is just one area, okay, I could say, all right, well, maybe it's just one specific area showing some uptick, but it's a broader scale event out here, all up and down the San Andreas fault here to the north, even activity west here. So the pressure is increasing across this area. San Francisco, not so much up here right now. We got one earthquake there from yesterday. That looks like it's on the Concord fault, little small quake. This up here is Clear Lake Volcanic Field. It's a volcano, right? But what's going on here is geothermal operations out here. This is a geothermal plant. I was down there a couple years ago investigating that earthquake swarm. I just wanted to see what was out there, aside from satellite imagery, and everything's secured. You can't even go inside the facilities there because they have guards. But there's, I don't know how many, a good 15 or 20 of these geothermal plants. And in the geothermal field, you do get earthquake activity. There's a whole process involved that causes earthquake swarms here. Look at this total tally. It's not a volcano getting ready to erupt. If you didn't know anything about geology here or seismology, one would think, wow, this volcano is getting ready to erupt out here across the Clear Lake Volcanic Field, but it's not. Well over 1,000 earthquakes there in the last 30 days, but that is what happens there in the geothermal fields. Northern California has been a super hot spot as well. This is just the last 7 days. A lot of movement here along the coastal range, moving up into the southern end of the Cascadia megathrust area. This earthquake here happened 6 minutes before the 8.8 that struck there off the coast of Russia a couple days ago. I was actually down here in Fort Bragg getting a little bit of R&R in, supposedly, until that big earthquake struck. And then we were in a tsunami watch, so had to head home and cover the big earthquake news. So that was a short-lived trip. But this earthquake here, very suspicious. It came in as a 4.8. It almost, did they upgrade that? I thought they went from a 4.8 down to a 4.3, but it's a 4.5 now, just shy of the Cascadia subduction zone here, the southern segment. There's been a lot of suspicious activity down here, some deeper movement quakes into the southern end of the Cascadia. This is the last 30 days, but this specific earthquake right here in the blue, 6 minutes prior to the big 8.8. I'm thinking there that maybe this was about ready to go. But so far it's holding on. But in the last 30 days, a lot of strain building up down here across this area. And the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone can result in up to about an 8.4 earthquake here. It's a major subduction zone. A full rupture of the Cascadia results in the great 9.1, or it could be probably a little bit higher. There has been higher events there, depending on how much strain has built up. But in between big events, we get these partial ruptures. And the last full rupture was 325 years ago. So it's a good possibility we could be talking about something partially happening down here. Just got to watch that. I believe, these quakes are the key to understanding and maybe predicting when the next big one happens. But you just never really know. But I tell you what, I pay attention to these maps quite a bit. The tremor activity yesterday, this is from yesterday. This is tremor, slow slip events being recorded into the subduction zone. This picked up like crazy following that 8.8 earthquake off the coast of Russia. So it looks as though, at least here for the northern area, north of today we got to include Southern California as well. So it looks like whatever took place there amplified the strain out here across the west coast, which is opposite of what the 9.1 did in 2011 there in Japan. This is a broad area of tremor, pretty much the entirety of the Cascadia tremor, the subduction zone here, showing this activity from yesterday. This is not volcanic tremor, but slow slip events as the plate here, the Juan de Fuca plate. Let me bring this other map up and show you guys. The Juan de Fuca plate up here, there's technically 3 plates, but we'll just call it a whole, this Juan de Fuca plate. Tremor is a result of this plate here further pushing down underneath this area. The subduction zone begins right here. In fact, you can see it on the oceanic crust map beautifully, but hazardously and dangerously there on the map. And it's been building up steam. It starts here at Northern California. That's the southern end. Runs all the way up here, just about to the Queen Charlotte Sound area. But the most strain I feel like lately has been down here across the southern end. Definitely see all these folds here, and that's the result of the Juan de Fuca plate. Well, it's moving further underneath the North American plate here, and that tremor map here is showing it. Definitely ramped up since that 8.8 struck. We'll check this out here a little bit later on this evening once the newer map comes out. This is from yesterday, so today's event will be, we'll definitely have to see what it looks like. There's been one more, well, that's from yesterday here. Yeah, things have kind of backed off today across Northern California, but like I said, we'll watch that and see what gets reported there tonight. Mount Rainier, a couple earthquakes there this morning and last night. This is an area that I've been watching because of the elevated earthquake activity, right? Let's go over here to the Mount Rainier volcanic seismicity map, and there's been a little bit of lack of reporting here for earthquake activity here recently. In the last, technically, it seems like the last 3 or 4 days, they've dropped off the number of earthquakes that are reported, but there's still earthquakes occurring, and that's why I like to look at these seismograph stations here, because of the data. The data doesn't lie. Similar to a camera or a dash cam, right? You can't lie when the facts are right in front of you. And there's been a number of earthquakes here overnight and this morning. Let's compare it, okay? These guys are stating that a 1.1 at 6 o'clock this morning is the largest event here at Mount Rainier. 1.1, 6 o'clock. We should be easily, oops, that's Yellowstone. Where's my, there we go. 6 o'clock, there's your one, well, let's see here. There's the red line. This would be closer to 6 o'clock right here. That's at 6:01. So I'm thinking maybe it was this one right here, but look, previous, before 6 o'clock, there was another event. There was 1 hour later, there was a little 0.7. Little 0.7 is going to be at about 7 o'clock here. I don't know, maybe this one here, that little bitty small one, but the point that I'm getting here is that there's lots of earthquakes showing up here on this map and only a fraction of them being reported. There's another one right here. These really sharp spikes, and that's a localized event. Like I say, this is going to be a one pointer. It's either going to be this one or that one. But there's been numerous overnight and this morning here. So we're still, the earthquake swarm is still ongoing out here. Even all these little ones, you know, I'm guessing maybe they've, so many of them happening up there across that volcano in Washington that it's probably overwhelming to count, right? Because I believe a lot of these have to be reviewed and looked at by a seismologist. So I'll give them that. But there's still so much more earthquake activity than what's being reported here on the map. There's not just been 4 earthquakes here in the last 24 hours. That's should be probably around 30 or so, which would continue the ongoing earthquake swarm in a big fashion. These guys reporting just about 1,200 earthquakes in the last 30 days. Again, the count's gone down, so if we're looking at the last 3 to 4 days of only reporting a fraction of them, this could be up, closer to 2,000 earthquakes here. I'm sure it is. But as far as anything elevated goes, any type of unusual activity, magma movement, increasing magnitudes, that is not the case. It's just that there's still a lot of earthquake activity that is occurring that is not being accounted for, but nothing above the level we seen earlier this month. I just wanted to point that out there. One earthquake up here in Washington, that's a 2.8. Ooh, just off the eastern edge here of the Seattle fault. That's another area that's, that can produce a mid-7 directly underneath Seattle. That I believe I think the last time was a couple thousand years ago. When we get swarms on unusual faults out here underneath certain areas, I'll do a more thorough update. And I've covered this in the past here, but I don't want to go into that right now. But that is lighting up here, it looks like this morning at about 7:30 or so. About roughly around the same time as other areas across the West Coast started to pick up in terms of earthquake activity. So the strain is out here. We may not see any big earthquake activity right now, but it could very well happen during these periods of uptick anywhere out here. Yellowstone National Park, a handful of smaller quakes up there. I don't see anything big. But I will double check that. I do need to bookmark this page right here because normally I'll show the Yellowstone overview, which is a neat little graph layout of Yellowstone National Park, the seismograph stations there on a thumbnail view, which looks like, I'll show you guys just real quick here. This is what it looks like now because they've switched up the seismograph viewers there. Makes it a little bit harder to generate a layout. But this is what it used to look like. Right? You could see Yellowstone National Park here, all the seismograph stations. If there's an earthquake, it's going to show up. These darker blue lines here, back in March of this year, probably some wind. That does show up quite often there as far as the elements affecting the seismograph stations. So, but let's go ahead and check out the current one here. Loss of data here about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock this morning or so. That event here looks like that was another 6-pointer in the Russia area. We haven't covered that yet, but we're getting there. But as far as local activity goes, it does look like there was one this morning. No swarms. I don't see any swarms going on, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that. The rest of the states out here, just minimal activity. Oil fields getting earthquake activity. New Madrid seismic zone, one little earthquake here, 1.7 this morning. North American plate definitely under strain right now. Let's go ahead and check out the activity here across Russia. This is where the 8.8 struck. Massive amount of aftershocks. Goodness, quite a bit. 74 just in the last 24 hours here. So total tally right now gives us 247 earthquakes, and that's in the last week as well. Before the 8.8 struck, we've seen an enormous amount of earthquake activity already. Not even joking. If we go back here to the, got to go back to the oldest, but not so far back to where, where the main point is the swarm here in the white circles, right? That is what kicked it all off, and that's what was pretty much foreshock activity to the big 8.8 there 2 days ago. It started off there with a bunch of 5s, and then it broke into a 6-pointer here. I'm going to go back here, 6.6, and that's a decent earthquake, right? Let's light that up. It was in that swarm area. One could think, well, that's going to be the biggest earthquake, but the magnitudes were not matching. The aftershock activity was not matching the magnitude here. We were getting quite a bit of larger aftershock activity following that 6.6. Then we had a 7.4. Roughly, that was just about half an hour following the 6.6. So one could think, well, now maybe this is the main quake. But the magnitudes here did not match for the 7.4. We're getting multiple sixes there. Many 6.0, more sixes than what should be common for a 7.4, right? Many fives, many fours, hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes that led up to the 8.8. It took about 10 days before the big one hit, the 8.8 here, which is down here. But you can see how many earthquakes have struck following that 7.4 previous. There was just way too many. Way too many. That led me to believe that there was something bigger about ready to happen. And sure enough, down the list of hundreds and hundreds of fives and fours, we come to the 8.8 that struck there on the 29th. The USGS states here that this here potentially did not relieve all this strain. In fact, I'll show you guys real quick. I showed this last night. This is a post here that the USGS put out on their Facebook page. They accumulated the slip rate there, which is 80 mm per year. That is a super high amount along that subduction zone. It built up 6 meters of strain since 1952, but they feel, and they had to include this, now partially released, because this area can get a 9.0 earthquake. It last happened in 1952. Right there, they mentioned that. Within that same area, just about 30 kilometers away. That's super close in terms of distance-wise for plates. But the key here is now partially release. So does that mean we could be seeing something bigger out here? Maybe a further adjustment? Potentially a similar magnitude that could further release us out here? Possible. Let's take a look at these magnitudes here. I want to go to the newest first. Take a look at the 8-pointer. Got to go back down here. I just want to look here real quick. 6.4. Man, there's just been a lot of... Maybe we should start... There's just so many earthquakes here. There's the 8.8. Okay, I'm just looking for the aftershock sequences here in relation to today's event. There's a 6-pointer moments after the 8.8. Couple sixes in there, which is very common, right? It's upper sixes following an 8.8. We should see at least one 7-pointer, potentially upwards of an upper 7 out here. At least one. Bunches of fives. That's very normal for an 8.8. Lots and lots of fives. Goodness. A bunch of fours in there as well, and I'm sure hundreds and thousands of smaller quakes. There's a 6.4 struck there that same day. Crazy. Let's see what we've had overnight here. Mainly fives. There was another 6.2 late last night in that same area. But obviously no 7s yet. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6-pointers so far. But it's definitely hard to say. I'm thinking maybe we should see at least a 7. It could happen at any time, though. It can happen days, if not weeks, after a main quake. But I'm just kind of wondering here if we may see something larger finish off the strain that's been building out here. So we'll have to watch that. No 7s yet, but we should see at least one here. So we'll continue to watch it. The latest quake, though, shows let's see what we got there, 5.1. Huge cluster still ongoing there. Some movement way up north here as well. A little odd earthquake, a 5-pointer outside of Greenland. That's an odd one there. What do we got? Another earthquake in Southern California, 2.4. You guys see that? Let's see here. There it is, showing up on ANZA, so I better keep the ANZA station up. 2.4. Let's go check here. Busy day. Like I say, a big one could hit California at any time. I'm not fear-mongering. This is just the facts. I've been studying earthquakes for years. I know what I'm talking about. This one, yeah, 2.4, just within the last couple minutes there. It did show up on the seismograph station. Same area. Again, the largest quake is a 4.3, but there's no main quake yet. Not like we've had a 4-pointer and all this is aftershock activity. Got to watch that closely here. It's right up against the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault. Japan, well, let's see what we got here for Japan area. That's pretty quiet up there right now. Not a whole lot happening there for the Nankai Trough. Pretty quiet. Typical movement here across the crunch zone. That's, you know, a ways away from the area of Russia up there where the earthquake activity is occurring. But this is very normal for this region. Down south here, a lot of deeper activity from yesterday. One earthquake last night there across the Alpine Fault of New Zealand. That's been pretty busy as well, but for now it's holding on. Newer activity looks like it's along the Kermadec Trench, the southern end here, with some deeper activity. Middle America Trench over here around Guatemala, still seeing some activity in the 2 and 3 range. Looks like a couple 4s in there as well, but no big earthquake activity. South America, that's common for a major subduction zone to see a bunch of 2s and 3s like that. The Atlantic Ocean pretty quiet, but I do want to look at this earthquake way up here. They're calling it 131 miles northeast of Pond Inlet, Canada. 6.2 miles deep. Like I say, kind of in an odd location there. I don't recall the last time I seen an earthquake show up out there in this area. Looks like around this region here, the Baffin Bay has seen some larger events out here historically, up to, looks like maybe 5 to 6 pointer. But where today's event struck here, well, there's been some smaller quakes in the 4.5 to 5.0 range. So just a little odd, you know, when you look at these graphs and stuff for many years, you kind of stands out there like a sore thumb. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? But we do have a lot of movement here with the North American plate. These big earthquakes can do so much in terms of shifting. You know, kind of sometimes it can cause global quietness out here, which doesn't appear to be the case right now. It does look like it's set the North American plate here into motion, resulting in some further strain in certain areas. Definitely got to watch that. Southern California lighting up like crazy. Hawaii out there in the middle of it all. Let's go see what's going on here real quick across the big island of Hawaii. And the reason why I check that, because it's a hot spot, right? It's a Pacific plate moves that can have some effects there on the hot spot and the volcanoes out here. Right now, let's go check out the deformation data. Pretty neat little key to see inflation. Look what that 8.8 did to ground vibration and movement at Kilauea Volcano. It pretty much vibrated the Pacific plate. Such a powerful earthquake, pretty crazy. But it had no effect on the inflow here and inflation for Kilauea Volcano. It looks like we're still on tap here to see an eruption fairly soon. I mean, this level that we got right now is matching the eruption back earlier in July. Not quite in our last one there, which happened on the 20th or so of this month. But we're getting close. So at any point here in the next couple days, we should see a return to an eruption there at Kilauea Volcano. I'll check out the webcams here of the summit area real quick. Still got quite a bit of volcanic gases there, that's what it's been doing, you know, before each eruption or during the pause, which can last, you know, a number of days. But this has been a rinse and repeat cycle since the end of last year, since December. I don't see anything that's changing out there. So expect another eruption here in the days ahead. Real quick glance at space weather activity. There's not a whole lot going on. This earthquake activity was not caused by any major solar flare, no major proton events. No major coronal holes. You know, one of the biggest earthquakes in the top 10 happened when space weather activity is about as quiet as it could be. So that's one for the books here. I'm kind of keeping a tally of how earthquakes and potential space weather solar activity is related here. But this is one of those times, and it's a big one. Had this been a massive coronal hole facing us, or a major solar flare with the subsequent large CME slamming into the planet, and then seeing that 8.8, wow, that would definitely go into the book as a yay. Yes, there's, definite connection, but this is a big negative in the relationship here, at least in terms of, the monitoring that I just talked about. Solar flares, CMEs, coronal holes, none of that was taking place at all during this big event. All right, and there's not a whole lot going on here, folks. The flare threat is dropping like a rock. The sunspots that we do have, as numerous as they are out here, well, look at that. They are just fading off. There's only been one area of interest here that's kind of popped up and grown somewhat, but even then that's still a little bit weak, is this area right here. Yeah, there's just not a whole lot out here on the sun for any flaring activity. We'll check out close approach asteroids here from NASA. See if any rocks are headed this way, which there's always thousands and thousands of asteroids around us. But somewhat the bigger ones with somewhat, these are way millions of miles away though, so there's really nothing of any close approach out here. There's some big ones out there, but we're fairly safe. All these newly discovered as well. 2025, they're crazy. All right, Storm Prediction Center for severe weather. Not a whole lot going on out here. There's only a 2% chance there for some tornado activity across the, looks like New Jersey, portions of Pennsylvania. That's 2% though, but just be on guard just in case there. A little bit of wind and a little bit of hail threat associated with the thunderstorms out there today. Keep an eye there on Southern California. Like I say, things are on the increase. It's highly noticeable. There's been a couple earthquakes here just off the southern branch this morning as well. These are small microquakes. One from last night, one from this morning. Another one from this morning as well. So just got to remember these times here, folks. Just think of how much has passed here since the last big events. I mean, we've built up civilization like crazy out here. We're living in the information age, and with everything else going on, people sharing tsunami AI stuff, not good. We're living in the disinformation age as well, so we got to be cautious of what we see, what we believe, what we watch. But the time out here does not lie. These are historical big events along the San Andreas Fault, and so much time has passed. Okay, eventually these numbers are going to read zero, meaning that the earthquake just happened. So it's, and then we got some time. We got some time after the big one happens, before the next big one happens. But the point is, don't get complacent. We're living here in the future, 2025, to where we could see a big event happen at any time here across the West Coast. All right, I'm out of here, folks. Have yourself a wonderful Thursday. It's supposed to be 100 degrees here in Northern California, so I'm probably going to stay inside here at the earthquake office. Just keep an eye on things. I'll drop in here on the live stream and say hi once in a while. We'll catch you guys out here a little bit later.